Welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at JSON as well as embedding in both lists and dictionaries. And the first thing to notice is JSON actually stands for JavaScript Object Notation, which kind of seems strange at first because it's a Python tutorial rather than JavaScript tutorial. But it turns out that JSON and Python dictionaries look exactly the same. The real difference is that JSON is a string, whereas a dictionary is in memory, which is kind of hard to go around. But if you imagine your code doesn't do anything until you run it, in the same way that JSON is just a string until you run your program. And likewise, if you imagine music, a sheet of music doesn't make a noise unless someone plays it, in the same way that JSON is the sheet music and your dictionary is the sound of someone playing the music on an instrument. And if we go back to our basic list, you've got your list is A, B, C. And so the first item of that list is an A. But what if we had a more complex list? So your list contains lists. So we've got first bit, second bit. And so our list 0 is actually a list itself. So what if we want to get one part of that list? Well, then we say list 2, 0, 1, and that will be the first item of the 0 list in the list, which is B. And so you've got a list in a list, which seems kind of confusing, but it makes sense. And then you've got the same with dictionary. So if this is our dictionary, we've got list 1 and list 2, and this slash here is just something you need in Python if you want to get onto the next line without it thinking it's a new statement. If you didn't have this, it would think that your dictionary ended there, and it would say you've got an error because it doesn't. So this just means you can go on to the next line. And so we've got list 2, and we're getting this back, which, if you remember from the last slide, was list 2. And then we can again reference different parts of list 2, and you've got this B. And actually, this dictionary has a lot of depth to it, because here we've not just got the one index from before, we've got 3 different indexes to reference different things in this list. And obviously you could change this to get different parts of this dictionary. So if we want to write JSON, it's again very similar to writing a dictionary, but you can make it go very deep. If we start, and we're, for example, planning a video, we might say we've got the presentation, and that's made up of different parts. So we've got slides, and we've got title, which is lesson 14. Then we've got the image, which in this case was JSON. And then we've got the code. There were many slides, we've got a list. And it was made up of basic lists. And then we had complex list, and then complex dictionary. And then, as well as the slides, we had script, and that involved explaining. And the things that needed explaining were this. Just copy it, paste it. You're going to format it now. If you do Alt-Shift-F, it then formats the code. And that also works with Python, so I always format my code at the very end. And as well as the presentation, we've also got the code, and in this case the language was JSON. Legally it's Python. And then we had the aim, and this time it was explaining a video. And then we have end project, and in this one it was true. One difference here is that in JSON, true is with lowercase, whereas in Python it's with an uppercase. And then when we have editing, In this case, it's just little. It's also got a number, and of course, it doesn't have to be text, so number's 14. And then maybe we had a guest, and the guest was null. In Python, you would use none, but in JSON, you don't. And then again, I can format it with Alt-Shift-F, and it just improves the spacing. And that's how you create more complex dictionary. So let's say we wanted to reference the language of the code. Well, at the bottom, it's not going to look great because it's still JSON. We take our dictionary, so we call it plan, and then we take code, and then the language. And if we were to run that, we'd expect to get back JSON. And then, for example, if we wanted to see the first thing that we wanted to code in our presentation, then we take our plan, and then we get the presentation, and then look at the slides, and then the code, and then we want the first one, so index 0. And obviously this can keep going to get some ridiculously complicated. And this can keep going and get even more complicated JSON format. JSON's also very useful because this is how you send web data. But one thing that kind of just touched on is that the ON in JSON stands for object notation. And that's kind of a brief introduction to something that we'll look at quite soon, which is object-oriented programming, where you have objects. Because this here could represent pretty much anything to be planned for a presentation. Could even be a person if they had attributes such as name, eye color, hair color. And so with JSON you can represent a lot. And of course there are some important differences from dictionaries, and that's mainly the null and the true. A couple of others as well, but they're not that important. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video. You've learned the start of another language. You understand in-depth dictionaries and arrays, and you can create multi-dimensional arrays and dictionaries. And you've created a plan for either your next video or mine. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you again same time next week. Bye.